So a few days ago, I recorded a video about how Missoula has become like a second home for me. But I want to strike that. I want to say Missoula is now my permanent home. I really got a good vibe over the last week here in Missoula. Just the locals and the fact that everything is slow moving. And I had a little bit of a conflict, but even then, people were very understanding. What had happened was I had gone to a Five Guys restaurant, and I had my computer plugged in, and being a brat there, writing computer games at the restaurant, and this guy, one of the custodians there, was about to spray this cleaner, and I told him, just give me a second. I'm gonna unplug everything. I have chemical sensitivities, and I like to avoid that stuff. And I saw him about to spray, and so he didn't understand me, and so I grabbed the bottle away from him so I could finish packing up. I was mistaken. He was deaf. And later when I found out, I wrote him an apology, and he was very understanding of it. And we shook hands, and that was that, right? In Seattle, that probably wouldn't have gone down very well, right? And that was good. And I got a very good vibe after that, right? And I love the slow pace of life here. I love how I don't feel pressured when I'm talking to somebody, right? Like when I first moved in here and I was talking to my landlord, when I talk to neighbors here, I never get a feeling that I gotta rush, right? Oftentimes back home in Seattle, or maybe I shouldn't call it home anymore, previously in Seattle, oftentimes I'd be talking to people and I would make mistakes because I would feel a rush to talk, interrupting people, having people interrupt me. I don't get that vibe here. I feel like time is very slow and there's always a chance to respond, which is good. I should have moved out to the country a long time ago, except that I didn't know of any career opportunities back then. 5 years ago, I got into an argument with my girlfriend and I stormed out of her home. I was going to drive home, but I was in such a mess. I ended up driving to Ellensburg. I spent the night there looking at the night sky. This was in March when the Milky Way was visible. And the next day I spent the day in the city of Ellensburg, and I got a very good vibe. And it was around that time I decided to go back to Ellensburg regularly. Every time we had a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse or a conjunction, or even just a really good full moon, I would go to Ellensburg to view it and then spend the following day there, and just got a good vibe. To give you an idea of how much I love Missoula, I was recently interviewing for a job. The job is back home in Seattle. I was hoping I could work remotely. The hiring manager likes me, but he said there was a hiring freeze and they're waiting for the quarantine to end. Back in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's not going to work. Then I don't want to actually go there to Seattle. I didn't tell him that, obviously, because I'm hoping that maybe if the quarantine doesn't end and he does need somebody anyway, then I could just join as if nothing happened. Then back in my mind, my heart sank. I'm like, that's not the job that I wanted then, because I don't like Seattle. I don't like the way I get treated there. I talked about how people who are single, people who have disabilities, don't get very good treatment in Seattle, right? That issue at Five Guys, if that had happened in Seattle, I bet we would have ended up in a big fight, right? At the very least, I would probably be too embarrassed to ever go back to that Five Guys again, right? If this were in Seattle. People are very fast-paced, right, over in Seattle. If you grab the bottle, there's instantly a fight, right? Well, maybe it's because the guy was deaf. He has probably run into problems like that before. That might be it. I don't know. Who knows? It just turned out very well here in Missoula. Now, earlier this year, at the beginning of the quarantine, I really regretted that I didn't leave the country. There was another city that I liked. I still like that place, but I think Missoula is now hopefully my permanent home. I'm going to look for career opportunities here too, so that I have something to do after the quarantine is over. But I was thinking about leaving the country and going to a second or third world country to ride out the quarantine so I can save a lot of living expenses, and then I could save up. But come to think of it, I made a lot of connections here, and I was mistaken. I actually liked it here in the U.S. Even if I didn't get to accumulate another 300 or 400 ounces, or however many ounces of silver it would have been, it was a worthwhile price to pay to have the connections and to be able to speak the language here. Right? Oh, that's a big one. Connections are very important to me, especially during this time of social distancing. Right? I would have been even more social distance if I didn't have language. But my experiences with how I got treated as a single guy and as a person with disabilities, my experience with how neighbors interacted with me, my experience with not being rushed to make decisions. I can't tell you how many times in Seattle I jump from one bad decision to another. Sometimes trying to leave one bad situation, I jump into another bad decision because of that feeling of rush, right? I haven't had a sense of doing that here in Missoula. My first day moving in here, there were a few things that were off, and I didn't feel rushed to argue with the landlord. I composed myself when I talked to the landlord, and we came up with solutions. I hate to bring it up in this video what went wrong, but it was more of a problem solve rather than, oh my God, I got to jump into another bad situation, right? Thanks for watching.